So my first question for you is, you grew up in New York, so I'm assuming that was a huge point of inspiration for why you love fashion, but tell us a little bit about where that fashion bug comes from.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail right on the head, Candace. I tell everybody I'm proud to be a New Yorker, and yeah, my quote "fashion for passion" really stemmed from there. If anyone and your listeners has ever been to New York and experienced it either as a visitor or have lived there at some point, it's a massive city with just millions and millions of people from everywhere. You walk the streets and you hear different languages all the time. It's like that now. It's like that when I was a kid. And really just the different neighborhoods. And I grew up in Brooklyn. So I'm from Brooklyn, and but my mom, she worked in Manhattan. She worked on Fifth Avenue, so I saw everything from street style before it was known as street style. So growing up in the era where, particularly in Brooklyn and Queens, where the hip hop culture was born and growing, all the way to the other side on Fifth Avenue, where you have a lot of kind of high street folks, that are donning, the biggest designers and just everything in between. You got the neighborhoods like Greenwich Village and Soho and all that. Every area had its own little flair. And I just really remember just being in awe of how clothes can really help you express who you are. The style, the way you wear it, the attitude you have, the confidence that you have. And, but it was just really, cool style is cool style, regardless of what like neighborhood or area you're from. And that was one thing that I feel like everyone had a deep appreciation of. And I developed that too. What I will say, Candace, is that I really, really paid attention to women, to how a beautiful dress, drapes on your body, creates this amazing silhouette, and you just own the room. So I started from a young age, and I think even before I was really like conscious that I was doing, I reflect back now and know that's what actually happened to me. That's the experience I was having. But just again, seeing women of all different shapes and sizes and heights, when they were wearing something that looked amazing on them, there was nothing that you could tell her, right? She owned it. And I think that's something that really I carried for all of my life, eventually to when I did decide to start my firm 8 years ago. So yeah, it's all started in New York.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. One, I feel like if I weren't from Dallas, then I would be from Brooklyn. I just feel like it's in me.
That's like your sister,
yeah.
Your sister city, right?
Exactly. It's like my sister city, but I can't imagine how it just had to be living and breathing in that space. I'm so curious. Also, you mentioned that your mom worked in Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. What did she do?
Yeah. She actually was an executive housekeeper for all the old heads out there like me. So back in the day, there was a company called E.F. Hutton, huge financial firm, and I can't remember, the Lehman Brothers is another big financial house that was tied into some of the economic things that we had going on a few years ago, with Bears and Stearns and things like that. So E.F. Hutton was a major player in the finance market in New York. And so they actually had executive apartments in a building right on Fifth Avenue, right across the street from Central Park, that the executives, they would live bi-coastal a lot of times between New York and LA. So whenever they were in town, that was where they stayed. And so my mother worked for E.F. Hutton, and she oversaw the maid staff really that maintained the apartments for all of these folks. So I really got a really great inside look on how, quote, the other half lives. Because, you know, she worked there for years and years, and she actually became part of the family of a lot of those families. And in a way I did too, even to staying in some of the apartments when they were going away or out of the country for a long time. And they were like, hey, have you and your daughter over summer break, come and spend a couple months here. So I got a real inside taste of that world and that life. But that's what she did. She, you know, came from humble beginnings. My mom and my dad both are from Barbados. I'm actually the first American in my family. So having emigrated here, you know, to the US and go into that space and really have exposure to all these folks. And what was really interesting too, I have a few claims to fame, but I met Dolly Parton when I was little because she stayed in that building. And Donald Trump actually used to stay there from time to time. I don't remember him, but my mom met him and Ivana many times when they were there. So yeah, that's what my mom did.
Interesting. Well, I'll tell you, I bet that was a lot of responsibility. I don't think I would have the nerves to be able to have a job like that. It would just be like, I don't know that everything's perfect. I, you know, could not handle the pressure of something like that. So,
and it wasn't, you know, my mom, and this really trickled down to me. I take great pride in what I do, and I learned that from my mother. So, you know, she was very proud of the work that she did. And again, she became the quote executive housekeeper because that work and that work ethic led others to trust her and to put faith in her to oversee the operations of, you know, of a team. That was very, I mean, it's confidential work, you know, it's not like a hotel staff, right? Where there's high turnover and things like that. It was a real team. But it was a lot of pressure. But she handled it with such grace because she had the trust of those that she supported. So it was very, she looks back at it with great fondness. And I actually look back at it from great fondness too, from the experiences that I had.
That's awesome. That sounds like just a very well-rounded amount of exposure that you had to have gotten from growing up in Brooklyn to seeing that Manhattan life. That had to be a really interesting upbringing. I'm also curious though, do your Barbados roots tie into your personal aesthetic as well?
You know, that's a really good question. I've never had anyone ask that before. I will say maybe in the summertime. Because it is in the tropics. Yeah. And having grown up in New York City, I mean, yeah, it gets hot in the summer, but fall and winter, I mean, in winter, it's cold. So from a style aesthetic standpoint, for me, I would say my growing up in Brooklyn and Manhattan, that had more of an influence on my personal style than the Caribbean. The Caribbean really just, that part of it kind of comes out more so when I'm in a warm climate. Like a few weeks back, my husband and I were in Miami and I had my big wide brim hats and all that, trying to be just, you know, looking fabulous, but also being really, really relaxed and wearing, you know, brighter colors and everything for the summer. But I'm very, very proud of my Barbadian heritage. And I actually, it took about 2 or 3 years, but just a couple of months ago, I got my my citizenship, my dual citizenship with being a citizen of Barbados now too. So
that had to be such a feather in your cap to kind of have that behind you and to really have that recognition. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's got to be so important and special when you're someone who has or comes from a family that immigrated and still respecting and cherishing those roots. That is really, really special.
It is.
So are there any trends or like specific like celebrity fashionistas that may have been people that really inspired you when you were growing up? Is there anyone that like comes to mind? You're like, oh, Grace Jones, I loved seeing her in print.
Yeah, you know, so for me, I would have to say, well, I love Grace Jones. And I remember the first time I actually saw her was in one of the James Bond movie that she was in, A View to a Kill. And I just thought she was so cool because she, you know, she had like the whole androgynous thing going and like a lot of edge and the hair, you know, the fade haircut, like slamming body, like in the jumpsuits.
Yeah.
She just was amazing. So she stands out as an icon, but I have to say, and this is kind of going into like the late 80s to early 90s for me, that was when you really went into kind of like the supermodel era. So I always loved fashion, and I was big into, that's when like Naomi Campbell was coming up, Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista, like those were my icons. And I think it was because at the time they were so very prevalent in the fashion scene. They dominated all of the big fashion Vogue, Mademoiselle, like all the covers. Also, they were featured in so many of the editorials. So I really got a true appreciation for, and again, cementing what I was saying before in terms of like how beautiful, clothes can be when they drape on a woman's body, but then seeing models take it to another level, whether they're on the runway or, or in a shoot, and they're just posed that one way that brings out all of these great aspects of the clothing, right? The piece, what the designer had in mind, all of that. So it's a little bit of everybody.
Yeah. Well, that had to have been such an amazing time, though, to be coming up when, supermodeling is not something that has been around forever. It really, really came to importance and, towards the end of those decades. And so it had to have been amazing to see some of the models like Naomi Campbell, who's still like,
I know.
Gosh, like
I mean, she doesn't age. I mean, her body but the reason why she's able to achieve that is she takes such good care of her body. She stopped drinking alcohol, I don't know, like 20, 25 years ago. It's been a long time. She's very, very fit, very active in her daily life with, exercise and fitness and all that. And I do truly believe, when you take care of your body, it serves you in the end, because she doesn't look, the age that she is now. Even when you compare her to some of the other supermodels of that time too, she looks as young as ever.
Honestly, a picture of her today and 20 years ago is like yesterday and today. It's like the same.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's because she takes great care of herself.
Yeah. No, that's so huge. Also, just because we happened to talk about her, I saw that she just she became a mother recently.
Yes.
She posted the photo of this baby.
I saw that yesterday. I know. And I was reading some comments about it, and it was, some people were saying, well, she better get ready, to enter this different phase of life. Her life will never be the same with the child, which I mean, obviously is true for anyone that experiences that. But another person chimed in and said, well, because the comment that was made was a reference to, gosh, my parents would never do that at that age. They were looking at that time to kind of live their best life. And someone came back and said, well, you know what? Unlike a lot of other folks, hers was in reverse. She's lived a fabulous life, right? So she's now stepping into a conscious decision of motherhood, and more power to her, right? Like, let's do it.
I mean, whenever you feel the spirit tugging on you to step into that phase of life, I think it should be supported. And sure, the average person doesn't have a child when they're 50, but she's far from the average person. So
exactly. Let her be great and enjoy her little one.
Exactly. It's only going to get better for her. Haters are always gonna hate, though. We know that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your transition into having your own firm, attending the School of Style. I know that you were in recruiting for a while before you kind of transitioned into this space. So tell us how you came to opening that firm and how you came to Stylist.
Yeah. So my corporate HR background in recruiting, it covers a span of 15 years. And a lot of it was spent in the government contracting. Well, the first half of it, so to speak, a good chunk of it in government contracting. Then I went into kind of headhunting for a few years, and then came back to the private sector, but not in the GovCon space, but rather fintech. And, but all throughout, with the exception of when I was headhunting, all throughout it was in the technology industry. When I was in government contracting, I was in the DoD space. So a lot of influence and environmental, from an environmental standpoint, very, very centric on the military, and working on, contracts and initiatives to protect our country, both here and abroad. And then when I went into headhunting, because I had such a niche in the HR realm, excuse me, I worked in a space where I helped place HR talent, pretty much leadership, into new roles. And then when I transitioned out of that, then I went again back into the private sector, into the financial tech realm, which was really a lot of fun too. But I would say the seed, Kandace, for my business, from the idea that when it was planted, actually happened in that space in between when I was in the headhunting realm. So back in 08, 09, when we had the mortgage crisis years, at that time, a lot of companies were shrinking. And typically when companies are laying off, HR folks are like the first ones to go. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's overhead, it's not a business development or a revenue center. It's on the operation side, right? It's almost like dead weight when companies are shrinking. So we had an influx of talent that were HR professionals, and so few positions available to place them in. So as you can imagine, it was extremely competitive for the ratio of candidates per position. And my clients were twofold. My clients were not only the companies that had these very few openings available, but also the candidates. And I will say then, as well as now, HR is dominated by women. So a lot of my candidates were women. I would say 95, 97% of them were women. And they were in a space where they had kind of grown up in the companies that they got laid off from. They were there for years, 10 years, 15 years, what have you. And they were at a point in life where, gosh, they had to interview for the first time in over a decade for a lot of them. And interviewing internally and getting promoted is one thing, but interviewing externally for different organizations is quite another. So they found themselves in this really kind of vulnerable, kind of feeling awkward and unsure space. And, for the time period that they were with the other companies as well, business evolves outside of what they were used to. So they had to get used to what was going on in the marketplace. And my role was to really have them positioned to be as great as possible, right? As they were now being considered and interviewing for these other positions. So what I would do is I would actually invite them to come to my office and spend that time prepping them for their interview. And as a recruiter, that's something that I did for all of my candidates, no matter what. Whatever I knew, they knew. So the point of the meeting was to really give them a lot of kind of insights, right, into my relationship with the other client, and giving them insights into the culture, the environment, what led up to the position being open, who the key players were that they were going to be interacting with and also interviewing with, and kind of a picture of business partners, external, internal, really giving them that lay of the land so that they can be informed and really join up the deep experience that they had over the years and show how that can impact that new organization that they were interviewing with. So as part of that process, I would actually ask them to come to my office dressed as how they would dress to their interview. Okay. And that was very, very, very surprising. And I love sharing this story because it's important to know that these were not women that were green as in they weren't new to the profession. They weren't coming into the HR space as a young generalist or anything. These were women that were well into their 40s, sometimes 50s plus, right? They were high up.
These
But
are professionals, like they
absolutely
had years of experience, but
solid.
like you said, they hadn't interviewed outside of their company with people who did not know them personally.
Exactly.
To your point, for perhaps a decade. So I'm sure that was really intimidating.
It was intimidating for them. And what I discovered through working with them is that they certainly lost a sense of self, through that journey. So what that really means is that they were perhaps becoming a little bit more complacent with their own style. They kind of melded into whatever the folks were wearing where they were. I would see things like ill-fitting clothing in terms of size, poor color choices, colors that were highly distracting, or patterns, right, that were highly distracting for what they were going in for. And because you're looking at them, and you're not even paying attention to the words coming out of their mouth because the top just had way too much going on. So things like that, fading, pilling, and I mean, these are women that really they were so smart. Their resume represented them well, but there was a certain disconnect between that paper and what the image was being portrayed. So, and I see this day in and day out with a lot of women that I support. And really what it comes from is when you're in human resources, especially as a leader, you are giving. You're giving everything to the talent that belongs to part of that organization. It takes a lot out of you. A lot of these women, were career professionals, but guess what? They were also moms. They were also wives. So when they go home, they're switching hats and they're all about their family life. And this goes on for years, and they kind of, like I said, they lose themselves in that process. So really, I would give them, just out of sincerity and love and wanting them to put that best version of themselves forward for that real interview, to say, okay, you're this height, you need to be going to this brand. Because all the while I still kept a close pulse on fashion because that was just me. So I was able to direct them to the best brands for their size, their frame, give them a little bit of advice on color, toning certain pieces down, or maybe, you need to inject a little bit of color here because it, like all black on certain people, it ages them or makes them look sick, So just little things like that they really did appreciate. And that really was where I had that, I guess, that little seedling really planted that, wow, women, even really smart women, they don't really know a lot about how to dress for themselves the best way, or what are their best colors, or what they should stay away from. So that sat with me for a good number of years. And when I decided to transition from the corporate world and, start my business, and that took a few years to do, that was when I made a decision that I was going to become a personal stylist. But guess what? I didn't have any experience. So I was lucky in that I was actually bi-coastal between Northern Virginia and LA for about 3 years. So before moving to the Dallas market where I am now, I actually used to live in Virginia. And that's where I went to school to style. So when I was there, I attended the classes, did all the assignments, which were not just book assignments and things to turn in. You were actually going places. You were going to costume houses, right? You were getting that raw experience, kind of more than a glimpse into the industry. And then after completing the courses, then that's when I was able to pick up some internships and assistantships with celebrity stylists. So that is how I cut my teeth in the styling industry practically. And it went from me having a knack of styling to really doing it hands-on, right, with the stylist that I was supporting. I will say this, that I always had the intention of working with the everyday woman. I never wanted to be a celebrity stylist for all sorts of reasons. I mean, it's fun. It's fun. It's exciting. But personally, it was not fulfilling to me than to actually make an impact. I feel like each of us are here to serve a purpose in this world. And I wanted really to be able to use my authenticity, my true love for style, my true love for helping people, particularly women, and help them want more for themselves. So I took the best of what I learned from that experience and really carved it into the signature styling experiences that I deliver to my clients here in Dallas and also around the country. I do travel quite a bit for clients around the country, which I'm very blessed to do. But it just goes to show that geography is not a limitation. When people really want something, you got to do what you need to do to get it. So that's kind of how I got out of the corporate realm and came into styling.
Well, that is a great story. What stands out to me so much about what you described and what I have found is really a common thread between a lot of the women that I've interviewed, really across what I feel like is the fashion styling spectrum. So we've got technical designers, we've got stylists, influencers. I've really talked to just everyone around the gamut. And so much of what I found is women solving problems for women. Like you didn't necessarily come out as a recruiter saying, let me style you. You were just trying to set them up for success, and you see them come in and you say, how you're presenting yourself is really doing you an injustice. You have all this experience, you have all this talent to give. Let's make sure that that person shows up to that interview. So I love that so much because so many of the women that we interview are just solving problems for women, and it matters so much. And I think that when your work comes from a compassionate place, there's just something that is really indescribable about what you get out of it and what you're able to give to it. So I love that the foundation of it was just wanting to help women shine and like feel
and that's so true. Right. Confidence. And what also was really important to me, both then and now, is the dignity aspect of it, Kandace. You know, I never, ever, ever make women feel like they're this big, right? They come to me with their hearts in their hands, in their sometimes their most vulnerable state. They don't know what to do. And it affects them day in and day out. And, you know, my approach, it always comes from love. It always comes from love. And a lot of my clients end up being, you know, friends. And, you know, even though we continue working together, it's like girlfriends getting together because I got to step into an intimate and vulnerable space in their life and they value that relationship. But the work that we do together is truly life-changing, but is always done with keeping their dignity in mind. A lot of women come to me broken when we work together, that I do everything to remove that because it is really, it's really something what influences that we have from, from the media, especially social media, from our peers, and sometimes even our family, that does not make us feel the best. And it takes a really, really strong woman to recognize that there is more for her, but it is in her power to do something about it.
That's so special. And the word vulnerable absolutely came to mind for me when you were speaking, because I think that, to your point, it takes a lot of courage to raise your hand, to welcome somebody into your space and your environment and say, I don't feel good about myself.
Yes.
I need some, like, that is not an easy thing to do. So I feel that it is, again, I feel like that's when you almost kind of have like a good bedside manner, you know?
It's
really
like,
have to come with compassion.
Right. I feel, I like to kind of call it sometimes style therapy.
Yeah.
Because, when we first start working together, we go through what I call a style intensive, where we really use that opportunity to kind of break down the barriers and find out what is going on, like what is getting in the way, and really figure out, okay, now what's going to be our next step to take that away and make you go to a much better space. both physically, but also more important mentally, because the two are so intricately tied. But it's such fulfilling work. And that's why I didn't go the celebrity route, because it's not, you know, and not that it's not knocking celebrity stylists. I mean,
Sure.
it's a great realm to be in, but that doesn't really happen in that way.
Yeah, you found your calling. You
I
found your
did.
story
I
with
did.
women, which is such a gift. And that was one of the reasons that I started Departmynt, is because especially after going through so many life transitions, I had a
Mhm.
baby, I found myself in this new body, in this new world. My
Yes.
needs had changed. And like, when you look in the mirror and you don't see the woman that you want to see, my goodness,
Mhm.
that is so debilitating. And
It
then to have
is.
a hard time finding those pieces, or even you may not even know what you want to look like anymore. Maybe you don't know your look. Maybe it's
That's it.
transitioning. You need help with
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, you need help. You need someone to inspire you, or someone to maybe even look at what you have. A lot of what I do includes that too, looking at what you have in a new way, right?
Yeah,
How are some different ways that we can style this? What, let's do what we can to get the maximum mileage out of your wardrobe.
I like that. I like that. Well, you've
Yeah.
touched a little bit on it already, but I'm so curious about your process. So if I'm a potential client and I come to you
Mhm.
and say, Roxanne, I need help. What happens
Yes.
from there?
Yeah. So the style intensive that I mentioned to you is a free complimentary consultation, basically, that I offer to clients, and it's done virtually via Zoom. And they can schedule it on my website, or if they reach out to me, I send them my calendar where they can just book it and compare it to their calendar, choose a great time that works for them, and then we're booked. And I do, send them a thoughtful questionnaire for them to complete beforehand. That way, as I'm stepping into those meetings, I already have an idea of kind of what her most difficult challenges are.
Mhm.
And we use that hour really to dig deep and uncover, again, what's kind of getting in the way, or where she's stuck, or clarifying what she doesn't think she knows, but she does, right? She thinks she doesn't know what the problem is, but when I ask questions and go deep, then it comes to light. Almost every style intensive, there's a breakthrough of some sort, where she's like, and I mean, this happened as recently as yesterday. She's like, gosh, I never thought about that. But yeah, that is a pattern that I have been in for the past, 10 years. So a lot of, and it's great, because even if we don't end up working together for whatever reason, what she takes away from that really changes her perspective on certain behaviors, or how she can move forward. But a lot of the times, after having that session, these prospective clients become clients. They want more, because we're just scratching the surface. This is just a conversation. I'm not looking at their clothes. I'm not looking
Right.
at their anything they own in their wardrobe. We're just talking. So basically, I have different packages that I offer my clients, but a majority of the work that I do is very high touch, and it is an extensive process. When I say extensive, in terms of it goes deep. And so where it starts after that style intensive, when we have our first appointment, we go through what I call my foundations. So we are determining their body type, their preferred style archetypes, and I determine their best colors as well. So when it comes to style is a blend of art and science. So the art is going to be the aesthetic, the vibe that they want, right? Some of the kind of intangibles. And then the science is going to be the actual, the tactical areas, the getting the measurements, determining their best colors. So that's where a lot of women miss the mark. Candace, so many women are wearing clothes they should not be wearing, that are
Mhm.
not flattering for their body. And, a lot of times they feel like, gosh, this doesn't look right on me, but they don't know why. So when we do this exercise, that really uncovers the why and helps steer them to understanding what does work the best for them. That's where we lay that groundwork. So then we basically take that information and go through what they own. So we go through a closet edit. And now that we've got that benchmark, we can look at these pieces objectively and say, okay, does this meet the criteria? Does this make sense for you? Does it make sense for you now? Does it make sense for you in the near future, or the future for the vision that we're painting for you, right? So we go through as much as we can in their wardrobe. And at that point, we're culling. So we're pulling out the pieces that don't make sense. And a lot of times I do, and for most of my clients, most of the clothing is would be considered kind of gently used. So it can be donated. And for anyone that's listening, if you're doing a closet purge and you have, a pile of clothes that you want to give away, I would highly recommend that you look for a local women's shelter and give it directly to the shelter, as opposed to like, a donation thrift shop or something like that. Because a lot of times those clothes actually end up in waste, especially overseas. There's some good documentaries about that on YouTube, so check that out. But give to women that need it now, that literally have $0, that they can't even afford to buy anything at a thrift store. So we are removing these pieces that are not serving them from their wardrobe. But we're also, from that process, we're identifying what the true winners are. And the true winners, those are pieces that me and my team actually take photographs of, because we do eventually end up developing a custom lookbook for the client. So that's where the lookbook work start, with taking and documenting the pieces that they have. And it can be shoes, garments, handbags, things like that. So when we come out of that space, then that's when we moved into focused curation. And that is basically me shopping for my clients. Most of my clients I shop for as opposed to with. And that's just because I have so many amazing relationships with retailers and direct brand relationships as well. I know sales before they're about to start. I do have some relationships where I can get a discount for my client just because I have that relationship. And it helps me leverage and stretch their budgets as much as I can. So going through the curation process, it's not like, oh, let me just buy some cute outfits and style them together. We definitely get some cute outfits and they're styled together, but there's a lot that goes into choosing that individual item that adds up to a lot of items. And it comes from that foundation work that we did. So I'm taking into account her height. I'm taking into account her inseam. I'm taking into account her bust size, her hips, right? Her body shape, her best colors, her preferred aesthetic. What look are we going for? What do we want to experiment with and introduce to her? And that's where I'm aligning with certain brands to say, okay, this is a great brand I want to introduce to her. Or wow, with her body type, I know this is, this pair of jeans is going to fit like amazingly on her. So all of that work, it's done with intent. It is really, when I shop for clients, I actually shop for them one at a time. I'm not out there saying, okay, I'm going to get this for Jane, and I'm going to get this for Barbara or whatever. I do one person at a time because I'm fully in the zone. I'm looking at the notes that came from our style intensive, from when we were at her home together, all the way through the technical aspect. So after the clothes are curated, then we have a fitting appointment. And most fitting appointments, or almost all of the fitting appointments, are done here in my Dallas studio, with the exception of when I travel. If I have clients that are out of state, we do take the clothes to them. But I sometimes have clients that will actually come from out of town and fly in. I've got someone coming in from Philly the week after next, where we did her closet edit and her foundations at her home, but she's coming back to Dallas for her fitting. So it's always great to have folks coming here from out of state for their fitting. But we go into the fitting, and the fitting is really where a lot of fireworks happen, because this is where they're actually seeing, feeling, and experiencing how beautiful they are, because I'm getting them in clothes that are replacing some of the basics that they may or may not have, honestly, but also getting them into some pieces that they would never have thought of before. Every single fitting, I kid you not, Kandace, every fitting I have, my ladies will say, Roxanne, I saw that hanging on the rack when I came in, and I didn't know about that, but oh my God, this looks amazing on me. I never would have picked this up in the store, or I never would have ordered that for myself online. And that is where the magic happens, because now they know, give the clothes a chance, get into them. Let's see what we can make of it. And maybe we need to do a little nip tuck here in terms of tailoring, or perhaps we need to do a different size, or sometimes maybe the piece doesn't work. Sure. And that happens. And I'm very objective in the fitting. I never want to influence unless something completely is like really not working. When it's not working, I will tell them, because I want them to understand the why. This isn't working because of this, unlike the other piece that we had on. So that's where that discovery comes into play for them, which is very important for me. This is where the empowerment comes from. Knowledge is power, Kandace. Right. If I'm giving them the knowledge, they're going to be equipped that they don't have to depend on me to introduce fantastic pieces in their wardrobe. Now, while a lot of them continue to, because shopping just isn't a lot of fun for a lot of women these days because of the state of retail, that's one thing. But if they're in a jam, or they're overseas at some little boutique on vacation, they're not going to buy, a piece of nonsense that doesn't work for them. Right?
Yeah.
They're going to know why.
It sounds like they really walk away from your experience like educated, and really almost like with like a checklist, like, okay, Roxanne told me I tend to veer here, but this is actually my happy place and my sweet spot. So let me like put that color down, or like,
right.
For me, it's Kelly green. I look absolutely terrible in Kelly green. It makes me look like I need to be in an infirmary, and I leave it alone. And it's so important to know those things for yourself.
It totally is
so empowering.
Right. But it's beautiful, because once they have that formula for themselves, right, they're not making poor decisions on what to introduce in their wardrobe, which ultimately means they're not wasting money. Because a lot of times I'll have, when I do closet edits in particular, I will go in and see an array of pieces that still have tags on them, that they put it on, they tried it on, something's not working, but they just couldn't be bothered returning it, or didn't have the time, or forgot, or what have you. That's all that money just sitting there doing nothing. It's like a sunk cost. So by getting them to kind of understand the why, that is going to directly change their behavior. And one thing I do want to add in my process, I mentioned before, the lookbook. So after we've really had a fantastic fitting and have pare down the pieces that she is going to be taking home, it is important that she knows now what to do next. So, when we're having the fitting appointment, some outfits are styled, of course, with themselves. But guess what? Remember, we had those other winners from her wardrobe from when we called, that we knew, okay, this is a great piece. Or if there was a piece from her wardrobe and I said, okay, do you have something like this that we can pair with it? And she says, no. Okay, I put it on the list and I included it. She's not going to remember that Roxanne said to do this with that and put this with these boots or whatnot. So that's where the lookbook comes in. So not only do we have the images from the edited closet, but then we have the digital images of everything that I curated. So we're able to put it together and go in and actually style looks. And have a 100% fully functioning closet where every piece has a purpose and every piece is styled at least in 2 to 3 different ways. Because again, this is how you get that maximum mileage. And it's so important, because the learning and the seeing and the doing, this is how we get to coming from a closet that has all of these random individual pieces that just are not cohesive. They don't scream signature, signature style for that woman, to a place where, again, every piece has a purpose. It makes sense. And she looks fantastic in it. And she loves wearing it. And what happens from that? She feels amazing. She's going out into the world and going out in confidence, and she's not worrying about what she's wearing anymore. that is so freeing. And it's like night and day. It really is like night and day after women go through that experience. So that's how I help my clients. And then for ones that continue on working with me, you know, we refresh their wardrobe for different seasons. Or sometimes they have something that comes up in life. I mean, the pandemic, that shifted a lot of what women were wearing day to day. A lot of women were now, you know, on camera doing Zoom for work.
Right.
So, so it really is a vehicle to provide that additional support, but also to help the women that value this experience, but also don't have the time to go out and find the pieces that they need. Because there's a plethora of places that you can tap into if you're shopping online, but then shopping in person, there's not a lot of places. So it leads to just a lot of frustration. And that's something that I manage as well.
That's awesome. It can be really overwhelming. Shopping is just a complicated thing today. It's not easy. It is not easy at all. And it's not always fun. So I love that people do have options today, because the end result should just be that you have a tool to help you go into the world a confident woman, to get that confidence boost, just to feel good about yourself. And sometimes the shopping process alone can be a barrier in terms of feeling good about yourself. And that's definitely something that I'm glad we're in the trenches together trying to solve these.
To change, right? And, you know, another aspect too, Kandace, that I think that's worth mentioning in terms of the shopping experience for women these days is vanity sizing. So you have brands have all sorts of different sizes. So if you think you're, you know, an 8, a 10, 12, 14, whatever, and then you go to a brand and you like buy the same size, but it's not fitting you, it's too small or it's too big, then you're like, well, did my size change? Right. Or what happened? So it adds an air of confusion. And a lot of times just people just end up giving up because they feel like I can't find anything that fits me. When it's not really about that. That's where that technical aspect comes in of style. Yeah.
Right. And that's so tough, because feeling like you can't find anything that fits you, you might then begin to feel that you're the problem, that there's something wrong with you. I mean, I feel like there's just so much psychology behind how we dress ourselves, why we make the choices that we make. And so I'm so happy that there are people out there, again, just trying to give women tools, because everyone deserves to like walk into the world feeling good about themselves. And that's definitely something that I care a lot about. Right. And a lot of our women who I've interviewed care about that as well. And everybody brings up vanity sizing in their own way, like every single person.
Because it's a real thing.
We've all struggled with it.
Yeah, it is a real thing. And like, you said it so beautifully that what ends up happening, a lot of women end up internalizing it, thinking there's something wrong with them. And it's not. So, you know, screw the sizes on the tag, go for what your measurements are and buy off of that. And you will almost always nail it.
Yeah. Facts. Oh my gosh. I feel so empowered. Empowered me today. I feel like I just got a little boost of confidence there.
That's what I'm here for, Kandace.
I love it. Okay. Speaking about process, what I'm really curious about is just, what does an average day in your life look like? What does a work day look like? And how do you manage your clients that you have to travel for versus your clients that are at home?
Sure. So with looking at my day to day, it is pretty structured where Mondays typically are my admin days / content creation, or catch up. a lot lately is more been on the catch up side because we've just been extremely busy for almost going on a year now. Just the floodgates have opened in a good way. But we usually have Mondays as kind of admin days, and then Tuesday to Friday really split between two main activities. In the morning times is typically when I have my style intensives, and then the afternoons are dedicated to client work. A lot of my client appointments happen in the afternoon, or perhaps then that's when I'm doing my shopping. And sometimes that extends into the evening. And I will say, especially lately, there are a lot of late nights because, you know, when people think about styling, they just think, oh, you know, get the outfits on the person and you're all that, but you've got, you've got pieces that didn't work that need to get returned. You have pieces that you're prepping for fitting that need to be hand steamed, a lot of clothes. And there's the accounting aspect of it. There's logistics tracking. I mean, there's just so much. But that kind of breakup for me in my day has been working well, and allows me to manage my time as best as I can, especially when interfacing with my clients. And then for the travel aspect, I typically I travel pretty much Tuesday through Sunday. So any day of the week except Monday. And the process really is not that different for clients that are local versus clients that are out of state, because when I travel, I'm usually traveling one day. So we fly in, we take the first flight out in the morning to wherever they are, and then we come back home that night. And I will say it's a long day, but it works really well. I mean, it's kind of like a morning and evening commute, except you're not driving, right? So we have that. And, there is a little bit more logistically because we have to take the clothing with us. We're flying with it. Or in some cases, if I have clients that are virtual that are not ones that I'm working with in person and they're not in state, we're shipping clothes to them for their virtual fittings. So it really kind of depends on what we're doing, but the process is pretty much the same. Everyone really goes through that same experience, whether they're here or if they're out of state.
So I hear you saying we a lot. It sounds like you've got a team, which is awesome. Tell me about how you decide what you can delegate, because I would think that with something that is such a vulnerable and personal and intimate experience, there have to be some things that you own, but then, I mean, I'm sure for time's sake, at least there has to be some responsibilities that you hand off. So how do you determine what those things are?
So that is definitely a work in progress. But the core remains the same. My role is to be interacting with people as much as possible, whether that is with prospective clients or whether it is supporting my existing clients. And anything that does not fall into that space is what is usually handed off. For instance, like social media. Now, I'm certainly involved in the content that's put out. I approve, everything. We generate it together. We're doing videos and things like that. But my creative director, Sydney, she's the one that actually manages that. She's the one going onto Instagram and, and posting for me. So things like that I don't need to have a direct hand on. It's still authentic. It's still me because it's still my messaging. And it's still what, we created. But things like that, I just don't honestly have the time. When we get certain types of inquiries, I'll have Sydney or my intern, Haley, respond to, certain requests. Again, anything that's kind of like admin or operations. Lately, the young ladies have been really helpful to me in steaming because we just, it ebbs and flows. Like we had a few weeks back where we had 4 fittings each day back to back. So, I mean, there are clothes literally everywhere. Next week, we've got 3 back to back. So I can't be spending my time steaming because I'm styling, right? I'm shopping, I'm engaging with my clients. They're sending me like, Roxanne, I've got 4 events I need to go to and I need, here's a description. Here's what I need, what I'm going to be doing. Here's the type of thing that I need. What can you get for me? So I've got to be available for that. And that, like I said, it's a work in progress because it evolves where more and more is getting put onto them, the team to manage, which is great because it's growth opportunity for them. They're really involved in really intricate spaces of the business. They're such a joy to work with, and the clients love working with them too. So it kind of, it's a nice little family. It's extended, but we've been kind of figuring that out again as we continue to get more and more busy and booked out. You really have to kind of decide, okay, what makes sense for me to handhold, or what else, what can I have them take care of for me.
Listen, she is booked and busy, ladies and gentlemen.
I am, we're usually, and I'm blessed. It's a good problem to have. I'm usually booked about 4 to 6 weeks in advance. And I'll tell you what, right now I'm actually booking people in early August at this point. If for people that want to work with me, we go through onboarding, but their appointment is usually, the first appointment is usually at least a month out. But that's a good indication, right? That I know what I'm doing. But again, it's a really good problem to have.
That definitely is a good problem to have. So I was going to ask you about what self-care looks like for you, because I know from myself and my own work, doing design work and that more intimate work is really rewarding, but it can also be very mentally taxing. So one way, seriously, one thing I feel like delegation is self-care. Whenever I talk to someone who does not have someone helping, I'm like, listen, you cannot do this by yourself.
Right.
You've got to get some help. So I'm glad you're doing the most important thing.
Yes.
But I'm also just curious, outside of that, how do you protect your creative bug? You can't be creative 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So how do you take care of that, and how do you keep yourself energized?
Well, that's a constant struggle for me, just because I'm the type of person too that gives, and I want to be there for my clients. I want, the minute they email me, I want to respond. But I have been a lot better in the past year or so, blocking out, again, times on my calendar that this is when I'm going to respond to emails. This is when I'm going to do my style intensive. This is when I'm going to be doing shopping. So that time management is a key factor. The time management also allows me to do things like Pilates. So I do Pilates about twice a week. And that is my time where I'm not thinking about anything else. I've done yoga in the past as well, but most recently I kind of dance between yoga and Pilates every few years, but I'm in the Pilates mode right now. I absolutely love it. But that's just a great way for me, Kandace, just to really unplug. And I go early. My Pilates class, the ones that I typically go to are 6:30 in the morning. It's a great start for my day because it gives me some clarity and it makes me feel good. It gives me energy to get through the remainder of the day. I also do it's funny, one of my clients is a masseuse. So I'll go to her from time to time to get massages. And I have to tell you again, people think styling is all glory. Styling is a very physical activity. When you have fitting appointments, you are down on your knees, like looking at measurements, you're pinning for a tailor, like what you're up and down, you're lifting garments, those boxes when they arrive. It's a lot of physical work. So it's important for me to keep my body toned and healthy so that I'm able to do that. But when I get to the point where it's just like, I'm feeling like a knot in my back or something, I've got to get a massage. That's how I indulge. And I also am very big into like skincare, particularly on your face. So that's an indulgence for me as well, where I get facials on a regular basis. Hydrofacials are the ones that I love. And I get those like every other month, as well as like other kind of products that keep you just like feeling fresh and looking anew. That's another element of self-care for me.
Nice. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Sometimes just like a nice scrub at the end of the day, even if it's the small thing to add to your routine, I feel like it just feels like you're caring for yourself, which is so important, especially when you do work where you're always in service to others.
Right. And I think it's important. I just want to mention one other thing too, Kandace. I think it's important. I had a discussion with this in my virtual collective. I have an online style membership community that I manage along with my creative director, Sydney. And we actually every month we have a different theme. And throughout that month, we provide content and do live office hours that are mainly centered on the theme. So I think February or March was self-care. And one of my members posted a really great comment, you know, when we were asking about, well, how do you go about doing self-care, just like you asked me? And she made the point, she was like, I think it's important to note that self-care isn't necessarily all physical, like getting the massage or getting the facial. Sometimes it can be just going out and doing something you love. Sometimes it can be you reading a book, or you meditating, or you just having a few moments to yourself. So I think I ever since she said that, I think of it in a different way. I think of it a lot broader than what I would normally think of it. I would think of it as something, you know, physical and, you know, exercising or getting massage or whatnot. But she kind of brought some other elements to it. So I thought that that would be worth sharing.
Oh, I like that. Having those moments of calm are so important. I know that's something that's important to me is I have to have some quiet baked into my day. I need for there
Yeah.
to be time where I'm not moving a million miles an hour and I'm
Yes.
clear my schedule. And that
Yeah.
it took a while for me to understand how necessary that is, but I'm so
Hmm.
glad that I know now because of my goodness.
Yes. Yeah. It's
um,
it refreshes you.
It is the world of entrepreneurship can be so. I think it's incredibly rewarding. It's
Yeah.
also incredibly challenging in some of the best ways.
Hmm.
What advice do you have for any young entrepreneurs who are looking to start out, and maybe who are
Yeah.
specifically looking to start out in a role that is based around fashion, merchandising, styling, etc.? Like, do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so for anyone just looking to start out into the world of entrepreneurship, what I would do is find something that you love, because when you do that, it does not feel like work. You know, I never feel like I am working. I'm working, I'm building a business, but it's not anything like when I was in a 9 to 5, your typical, you know, corporate 9 to 5, nothing like that. So you know, when you're doing the work you love, it is not work. That's going to give you so much motivation to do more with it. So that would be my advice to kind of anyone stepping into the entrepreneurial space. The other thing I would tag on to that too, actually, Candace, is plan. I am a planner. You know, everything that I do with intent and purpose. And that's just my personality. Some people are great at doing things on the fly, but even if you are that person, you really need to think ahead. Truly think about where you will be, you know, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 12 months, 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. That's actually an exercise that my business coach, Heather Mulder, had made me realize. But also the biggest part of that is making sure that you're checking in with yourself on those goals as time passes. So at the end of that 6 months, did I meet that goal? Why or why not? Or give yourself enough grace to change them. You know, the pandemic changed a lot for everybody last year. So where can I shift? Just because you have a goal doesn't mean it can't change or flex, right? I think a lot of people kind of get hung up on that, because if they don't do that, and then they feel if they haven't made that goal, then they've failed. Where it could be perhaps it just needed to get changed or updated. So for entrepreneurs, I would say that was very valuable for me, and that's something that I recently embraced in the past like 9 months. And for anyone stepping into the fashion space, you know, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, my biggest recommendation to you is to understand how business works. And I'm not talking necessarily about the fashion business, I mean any business.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I get interviewed by high school students that are you know, doing school projects and whatnot, and or sometimes college, and they're you know, they're thinking about getting into that space, and they often ask me, should I get a fashion degree or should I get a business degree? And my answer always, or should I get another degree? My answer to them always is, if you can, get a business degree, because that will make you run your business so much more effectively. You can minor in fashion, or you can just get a dual degree, right, in fashion merchandising and so on. But without having that craft, especially if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's going to be harder for you to understand what you need to do to get things started, or to, to pivot and grow. So that would be my recommendation. And if you've already gone to school and gotten your degree in fashion, that's fine. Take a few business courses, or align yourself with a mentor that's in that space that you want to be in. And not only have them show you what it's like in the industry, but have them show you how they run their business. That is what you need to really, really pay attention to, because, with business, you've got facets that involve accounting and finance, legal, marketing, everything. And as a business owner, you have to understand that. So that would be my recommendation.
That's a great recommendation. I think that people have to know that the customer facing portion of your work is only part of the work.
Exactly.
So much else that happens behind the scenes to make those things happen and to keep that ship moving. So
right. And not sinking.
Right. Seriously. And not sinking. That is what we're here for, right?
Right. Exactly.
What spurred you to get a business coach?
So I have had, let me think about this, because my first time actually working with a coach, this wasn't a business coach, was when I was in corporate, when I was in HR, and I was at a space, and this is like years and years, I was in my mid-20s, so this is like a good 15 plus years ago. So I was at a point where I was trying to figure out, like, what do I want to specialize in, because I was always in recruiting, but even within that, like, what niche that I want to go in, what did I need to do from a certification standpoint to carve myself out from the others. And so I hired a career coach, and we worked together for probably about 6 to 8 months. And that was some of the best money that I ever invested, because for me, I am very goal oriented, but it's so helpful when I have somebody to keep me accountable. And that is where that coach stepped in, because I had my little homework assignments, I was doing the work, but she was really there to kind of guide me, and also kind of ask me some tough questions that I either wanted to avoid answering or hadn't thought of, but I had to actually think of. I had to move through it. So I really, that experience really, really sat with me for a while. And after moving to the Dallas market almost 3 years ago, I, needed to kind of reestablish myself in a local space, and really got to the point where I had several business initiatives in mind, like 6 different kind of lines, so to speak. And I knew that if I just stayed doing what I was doing, like, I would never get there. I needed that accountability again. I needed someone to meet with regularly to say, okay, here are the goals that you set out. How are you doing on them? Okay, now, why haven't you done that? Or how are you spending your time? Is the time that you spent this week touching any of these 3 goals that you set? So having somebody there, and also having somebody to give me kind of great other ideas too. Like, I don't know everything at all. So giving me some inspiration and making me think about things in a way that I probably wouldn't have thought of on my own. It makes all the difference in the world. And it really helps keep me focused. And again, what I was saying in terms of my advice for other entrepreneurs, it helps me always think ahead and think of, where do I want to be, and just reverse engineer the steps to get there. And that's always at the top of my head. Always, always, always. I've got goals.
Yes, I love it. And I love having an accountability partner. I know for myself, a lot of those people have been peers. They've been people that I admire. Yeah. So I think you can find that in a business coach, a life coach, a mentor, a peer. But I definitely suggest that anybody who's in business, really, I mean, honestly, anyone who has a career of any sort, but especially if you're an entrepreneur, I definitely think having some form of an accountability partner is super, super helpful.
Exactly.
So tell us, what is next for Roxanne Carne? I know you've got your goals 1 through 5 years out. Do we have a fashion line in the works? Like what's on your list?
Yeah, so I don't want to go too much into that, but there is a line that is definitely within the realm of fashion that I am really doing a lot of research on right now. A space that's very, very much in the style space as well, very style and fashion. It's adjacent to what I'm doing. So that's something that we are developing and hoping to lift off before the end of 2021 or early 2022. And really, you know, one of my biggest missions, and this is why the virtual collective, the collective that I mentioned to you, was something that I had started 3 years ago, actually. And I really wasn't on the right platform for it. So stepped away from that for a little bit and relaunched it again in January in a completely new platform where it's been doing a lot better. And the reason I talk about this is that my mission, and this is one of the goals for me, is to remove the barrier of the sense that women have about themselves and their image and style, remove the barrier that you have to have lots of money to look and feel great. So the community that I have, the membership is only $19.95 a month, and you get access to me, to my creative director through office hours that we have, content that we develop that's only for that group. But more importantly, you have a community of like-minded women that are sharing their stories, that are sharing their ideas, that are sharing their experiences, and moving in step in, you know, taking their image to the next level, whatever that may be. So that is something that is a huge goal for me, because I want to have as many women in that collective as possible, helping each other take that step, because we need that. And you don't have to, you know, you don't have to work with a stylist necessarily and have them overhaul your wardrobe if you don't want to, right? So for some people, that's not even something that they could do or could afford, but you can still understand how to do it and do it yourself and do it with proper guidance. So, so that is a huge initiative for us over the next year to really expand that out. I mean, it's virtual. We do have members that are from all parts of the country that participate, and we just want to see that grow.
That sounds amazing. I love it. I just love you have such a compassionate and giving spirit. It really, really comes through, and I'm sure that's why you have the success that you have. So I'm not at all surprised. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the fun part of our interview. We have a couple fun rapid fire questions. You just say the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, and let's do it. Polka dots or stripes?
Stripes. I'm wearing stripes. Although I love polka dots, but I really am into stripes right now. So.
Okay. Happy hour or brunch?
Ooh, brunch.
Brunch, okay. Yeah. Okay. Leather or fur?
Oh my God, this is a hard one because I love those. So I'll go with fur.
Okay. Okay. Brights or neutrals?
Neutrals.
Okay. Now this one I think is quintessential for, you are a fairly new Texan, so I have to ask you, do you say pecan or pecan?
Pecan.
Pecan. Okay.
Yeah.
That is what you should be saying.
Is that the way it's said in here in Texas?
That's the way that me and my people say it. So I don't know nothing. I know pecans. They are pecans.
Yeah, I've always said, even New York, pecans, pecan pie.
Okay. Exactly. That's what I think of. Pecan pie.
Pecan pie. Yeah. Pecan pie. Yeah. No, that sounds weird to me.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so that is the end of our rapid fire questions. The last question that I have for you before we get into how people can contact you is, what is your favorite style hack? And this is something that we love to ask because, kind of like what you alluded to, is sometimes you just need tools to use things that are already in your closet. And so
Yes.
we love to give our audience those style hacks. I will try them for our blog. So what I want to know is, what is your favorite style hack?
Yes. So the one that I want to share is because it's in line with extending the life of a garment, for example. So like when you have, this is specific for shirts. So if you have a long sleeved shirt that say, let's pretend like it's a button up collared shirt, and you wash it, and over time it's shrunken, perhaps it's cotton, but it fits you in the bodice fine, your bust, your waist and all that, but perhaps the arms have gotten shorter. And this happens to me from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
A hack is, if you take, and I've got it here for
Oh,
those that can see, this is a stretchy spring band. You can find these on Amazon. So what you can do is extend the life of your shirt by rolling up the sleeve. So if you put this on there, then underneath it, it will actually keep it in place. This is so helpful, because then what you're doing is that you're changing the look of that top. You're just rolling up the sleeves, but they're not going to get undone because you've got it secured by this. And then this hack also applies to any long sleeve top, like a blouse that you want to make shorter. You want to make it 3/4 length, or you want to make it a proper short sleeve. Just slip this on underneath the bottom of the sleeve and push it up to your desired length. And there you have a whole new top. It doesn't all have to be long sleeve all the time. So I like sharing that one because that's a really easy way to create new looks with what you have, but also extend the life of maybe some pieces where the sleeves got a little bit short, but you can still rock it. An alternate to this too is like a heavy duty rubber band. Of course, a rubber band would have to be the right size for you. But the thing with rubber bands is that they can pop. So we'd hate for you to like have one sleeve that's where you want, and the other one, blew up. So that's my hack.
Such a practical hack. I'm really excited to try this one out. One, because I just prefer, for my own height, I find that it works well if I roll my sleeve. I feel like it elongates me a bit, or elongates my frame a bit. Yeah. But I would have trouble with like rolling a sleeve and then it's falling down all day.
And it's falling down. Yes.
I can't keep the cuff right. So I'm really excited to try this one out. And especially because I tried one that we saw online, which is someone on TikTok said, "Oh, you should try like a hairband." No. That didn't. It was not the right size. I think,
and that can hurt.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable. And I think the band that you have is more flat. The one I had was more rounded.
Yeah.
It just did not work. So I think that one's probably going to work a lot better.
Yeah. And the one I have is gold, but there's black and there's silver. No one ever really sees it anyway, but they usually come in like a pack of like 4 or 6 or so. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful to you and to your audience.
I'll let you know how it goes. Yes. Well, Roxanne, this has seriously been such a joy and an honor to speak with you today. I think you just left our audience with so many gems. And I think that, again, your presence is just a little burst of sunshine. So we are so grateful for that. For our audience who would like to know, what is the best way to get in contact with you, and who might want to know about your collective as well?
Absolutely. So the best way to contact me is via my website, my main website, which is roxannecarne.com. That's RoxanneCarne.com. If you just go to my website and click on the contact page, you can I've got my phone numbers there. I've got my local number, my 800 number, or if you want to submit a form, just submit a form online and it comes directly to me. That is the easiest way to connect. And for my collective, which is called the RC Style Guide Collective, you can visit rc-style.com. And that gives you more information about that monthly membership, where you can really take the reins of owning and improving and perfecting your style as it aligns with your lifestyle at a very, very affordable rate of $19.95 a month.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Kandace.
Being on the Business Style podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the invite. It's been fun chatting with you today. Thank you.
so much.